What if God isn't silent because he left, but because something in you stopped listening? You prayed, you waited, and then nothing. Your words felt like they hit a locked window and slid to the floor. No warmth, no resistance, no sense of a presence on the other side. Just your own breathing inside what feels like an empty room with the lights turned off. And the most frightening part? It doesn't feel dramatic anymore. It feels like a cold house you've slowly learned to live in. Pattern interrupt. This is not normal. There's a moment almost no one talks about. Not when prayer fails once, not when answers take a few days, but when you pray, and afterward, it feels like tuning a radio that refuses to find the station. The dial turns, the static shifts, but the signal never locks in. You're still speaking, still believing, still showing up, yet it feels like talking through a phone with no one on the other end. And over time, that static stops alarming you. It becomes background noise. That's the danger. Because when silence feels normal, you stop asking whether something is wrong. People will hand you explanations. God answers in His time. Just trust harder. He's testing you. Sometimes those words are true, but sometimes they work like a sedative. They calm you just enough to keep you from asking the harder question. What if this isn't delayed? What if the connection is weakening? Not because God disappeared, but because the frequency drifted and no one noticed. In Scripture, God is rarely portrayed as distant by default. Prayer is described like a door meant to open. The Psalms sound like voices shouting into the night and hearing something answer back. So when the response fades, the Bible doesn't shrug. It says, check what's standing in the doorway. Isaiah describes prayer being held back not because God became weak, but because something formed a wall between the voice and the listener. That should make us pause, because unanswered prayer in Scripture is rarely random. It's relational. Like two people still talking, but no longer hearing each other. Let me ask you something honestly. When you pray now, do you linger? Or do you rush through your words like someone scrolling past a message they already expect to disappoint them? Do you still expect a response? Or have you trained your heart to expect nothing because hope feels risky? That quiet resignation, it isn't peace. It's someone stepping back from a door instead of knocking again. But what if silence isn't absence at all, and the real issue isn't God, but something slowly shifting in you? At some point, the problem stops feeling mysterious and starts feeling personal. What if this silence isn't about God's timing? What if it's about distance? Not emotional distance, but like two people sitting in the same room while slowly turning their backs on each other. You still pray, still believe, still say the right words, but it feels like showing up to a meeting where the conversation has lost its meaning. Prayer turns into a routine button you press. God turns into a service you expect to work on demand. And slowly, without announcing it, reverence leaks out of the room like warm air through a cracked window. Stop comforting yourself.
This shift rarely happens through rebellion. It happens through familiarity. Not scandal, not collapse, but comfort. You've prayed the same phrases so many times, they begin to feel like background music in an elevator. You don't listen closely anymore. You just let them play. God becomes not a living presence, but a predictable pattern. And when a sacred relationship becomes routine, the heart stops leaning forward. It starts leaning back. Like someone who once knocked eagerly, but now only taps the door out of habit. Scripture shows this pattern again and again. When people approached God casually, without listening, without surrender, without obedience, He didn't always respond with fire. Sometimes He responded by stepping back and letting the quiet expose what comfort never could. Not to punish, but to wake people up from spiritual autopilot. Because silence forces a question, comfort never does. Am I seeking God or just trying to get outcomes? That question unsettles people more than any sermon. This is the real issue. Here's the uncomfortable layer beneath the surface. God doesn't respond to volume. He responds to posture. You can pray loudly, like a storm hitting a locked gate, and still be walking in the wrong direction. Not because you don't care, but because your life and your words may no longer be facing the same way. But what if the problem isn't guilt, sin, or obvious failure, but a subtle misalignment that sincere believers almost never notice? At some point, the issue stops being about how loudly you pray and starts being about which direction you're walking. You can keep talking to God while your life slowly steps sideways from what you're asking Him to bless. It's like asking for directions while steering the car the opposite way. The engine runs, the wheels spin, but you keep drifting farther from the destination, not because you don't care, but because your prayers and your choices are no longer moving in the same lane. Here's a truth most people misunderstand. God's silence is not always absence. Sometimes it's friction, like two gears grinding because they're no longer aligned. Not rejection, not abandonment, but resistance. The kind meant to stop you before you drift too far off course. Before you assume it's shame or failure, pause, because the real cause is often quieter than scandal, more ordinary, more subtle, more common among sincere believers than anyone wants to admit. Misalignment doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like a promise delayed, like a letter never mailed, a grudge quietly stored, like dust collecting under a rug, a habit defended, like a crack taped over instead of repaired, an obedience postponed, like a door you keep saying you'll open tomorrow. You've learned to live with these things, like furniture you barely notice anymore. But God hasn't stopped noticing. So silence becomes not cruelty, but a pause button, freezing the scene until you look at what you've been walking past. Because God cares more about who you are becoming than what you are requesting. You are not abandoned. If God answered every request while your direction stayed off course, it would be like fueling a car that's driving toward a cliff. So sometimes He withholds the response, not to punish, but to protect. Not to shame, but to turn your steering wheel before you crash. Silence then becomes a mercy disguised as absence, a chance to recalibrate, a chance to realign, a chance to turn back before drifting becomes destiny. But what if the longest silences aren't meant to correct you, but to quietly rebuild you into someone stronger than you've ever been?
There comes a moment when silence no longer feels like a warning and starts feeling like construction. Not like a door being shut, but like a house being built behind scaffolding. You can't see progress. You can't hear movement. You only hear the quiet. And it's tempting to assume nothing is happening. But Scripture suggests the opposite. God often works the deepest where He feels the quietest. Like roots growing underground long before a tree ever appears above the surface. This is where many sincere believers begin to unravel, not in rebellion, not in anger,
but in private doubt. You start wondering, did I miss something? Did I fail too badly? Did God move on? Silence begins to feel like standing outside a house where the lights are on, but no one answers the door. And slowly, without realizing it, you stop knocking as confidently as before. Look closely at Scripture. Joseph sat in darkness long before he stood in power. David waited in the fields long before he sat on the throne. Even Jesus walked through moments where heaven felt distant. Silence did not mean abandonment. It meant preparation, like steel being tempered in fire or stone being shaped by slow pressure. God wasn't ignoring them. He was shaping them into people who could carry what was coming. Because faith that only survives when constantly reassured never grows strong enough to stand when reassurance disappears. This is how faith dies. Silence reveals what truly sustains you. Do you pray because you feel close, or because the relationship itself matters? Do you obey because results come quickly, or because obedience is right, even when nothing seems to happen? Silence strips faith down to its foundation, like a storm tearing away decorations until only the structure remains. And whatever remains standing after that, that is what God begins to strengthen. But there is one subtle mistake even obedient believers make during long seasons of silence. A mistake that quietly dulls the heart without them noticing. And it may already be happening. Here's the danger almost no one warns you about. When silence lasts too long, most people don't rebel. They relax. Not in anger, not in rejection, but in expectation. Prayer becomes optional, like a door you stop checking. Scripture becomes occasional, like a light you leave off in a room you rarely enter. Obedience becomes selective, like rules you only follow when they're convenient. Not because faith died, but because expectation did. And without expectation, the heart stops leaning forward. It starts leaning back, like a chair slowly tipping away from a table instead of toward it. God watches closely what you do when nothing responds, not to judge you, but to reveal you. Do you still pray when nothing moves? Do you still obey when nothing changes? Do you still seek when nothing is felt? Because silence doesn't remove faith. It exposes what faith is made of.
Like fire revealing whether a structure is stone or straw. Some people come out deeper. Some people come out distant. Same silence, different posture. The most dangerous shift is not rebellion, it's coasting. You don't walk away from God. You stop leaning toward Him. Like a boat that cuts the engine and lets the current decide the direction. No noise, no drama, no collapse. Just drift. Quiet, steady, unnoticed. Until one day, the shore looks unfamiliar. Silence is not God stepping away. It's God stepping back, so your trust can learn to stand without emotional crutches. Not borrowed conviction, not spiritual adrenaline, not constant reassurance, but quiet endurance. Like muscle built in resistance no one sees. You stop praying to feel something and start praying because the relationship itself matters. Even when the room feels empty, even when the signal feels faint. But silence doesn't just test your faith. It reveals how you wait. And the way you wait determines what kind of person you become. If silence feels heavy, don't try to break it immediately. Instead of shouting louder, try stepping back. Like someone who stops shaking a locked door and instead listens for movement on the other side. Most people fill silence with noise, music, scrolling, talking, distractions. But connection often returns not when you speak more, but when you create room for listening. Silence becomes useful when you stop treating it like an enemy and start treating it like an empty chair waiting for a conversation to begin. Here's something you can do today, not tomorrow, not someday. In the next 5 minutes, sit still. No phone, no music, no multitasking. Just sit like someone waiting at a door they truly expect to open. Say one sentence quietly. If there's anything you want me to notice, I'm willing to see it. Then stop talking. Let the quiet breathe. Don't force a feeling. Don't manufacture a thought. Just remain present, like a radio finely tuned and waiting for the signal to return. If nothing happens in those 5 minutes, don't assume failure. Silence doesn't always mean nothing is happening. Sometimes it means something is shifting slowly, like a compass needle realigning over time. The goal isn't to hear a voice. The goal is to retrain your attention, to move from demanding answers to practicing awareness. Because clarity rarely arrives in a rush. It arrives like light creeping through a window as your eyes slowly adjust to the dark. If this resonates, repeat this practice daily, not as a ritual to impress God, but as a habit that keeps your heart awake. 5 minutes, stillness, listening, readiness. Over time, this small discipline reshapes how you pray, how you listen, and how you respond. Not with panic, but with steadiness. Not with pressure, but with quiet strength. But what happens when you've practiced this and God still feels silent for weeks or even months? How do you stay alive inside when the waiting stretches longer than your strength? There comes a point where silence stops feeling mysterious and starts feeling exhausting. Not because you stopped believing, but because you've been hoping for too long without relief. It feels like standing in a long hallway where every door looks the same and none of them open. You keep walking, you keep knocking, but each unanswered moment adds a little more weight to your chest. Not dramatic despair, just slow emotional fatigue. And that's where many sincere people quietly lose their strength. Here's the lie that creeps in. If God hasn't answered yet, I must be failing. That thought spreads like a hairline crack in glass. Soon, every prayer feels like a test. Every quiet moment feels like an accusation. You stop approaching God with trust and start approaching Him like a judge you're afraid to disappoint.
But silence is not evidence of failure. Sometimes it's evidence of growth you can't see yet. Look again at Scripture. Those who waited the longest were often being shaped the deepest, like a seed buried in darkness before breaking the soil. The waiting wasn't wasted. It was building patience, humility, courage, and a faith that didn't collapse without constant reassurance. Silence trains you to trust God's character more than your feelings, to keep walking even when the map feels blank. When motivation fades, don't chase emotion, chase faithfulness. Instead of asking, "Do I feel close today?" ask, "Did I stay faithful today?" Pray even when it feels dry, like lighting a candle in a room that hasn't brightened yet. Read Scripture even when it feels ordinary, like watering soil before any green appears. Because endurance is built through small, repeated acts that feel insignificant in the moment, but become powerful over time. But there is one final shift that transforms waiting
from painful endurance into quiet confidence. And once you make it, silence will never feel the same again. At some point, faith stops being about getting answers quickly and starts being about trusting God even when answers don't come. You stop asking, "Why is God silent?" and start living with a deeper truth. Even when I don't hear him, I know who he is. Silence no longer feels like rejection. It feels like walking in the dark with a steady hand guiding you, even when you can't see the path. You stop panicking at quiet. You stop needing constant reassurance. Your faith becomes less reactive and more rooted. Not built on emotion, not built on spiritual adrenaline, but on quiet confidence that doesn't collapse under pressure. Sometimes, God doesn't change the volume of his voice. He changes the sensitivity of your hearing. Like a musician tuning their ear until they can hear a note others would miss. And when that happens, you realize God never truly disappeared. You were being trained to listen with maturity instead of urgency. Before you leave this video, do one thing. Put your phone face down. Sit still. Take one slow breath. Then say quietly, "If there's anything you want me to notice today, I'm ready." And stop talking. Don't scroll. Don't rush. Don't fill the silence. Just sit, like someone waiting at a door they truly believe will open. You don't need a dramatic moment. You need honest attention. Because sometimes, God doesn't speak louder. He waits for you to slow down. And if God still feels silent after this, the next question isn't, "Why isn't he speaking?" It's this: how do you stay spiritually alive when silence lasts longer than your strength? In the next video, I'll show you how to pray when motivation is gone, when faith feels tired, and when waiting feels unbearable. So silence doesn't drain you, but strengthens you. Because silence isn't the end of communication. For many believers, it's the beginning of spiritual maturity.